Thanks for tuning in to leftcoastnews.net, news and information from the wacky, sometimes communist, liberal west coast of the United States. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net. All right, today's Olympia watch bills that are getting more hearings, SB 5444, and this is about carrying a gun in a restricted area. New restricted areas. It would be unlawful for any person to enter the following places when he or she knowingly possesses or knowingly has under his or her control a weapon. The premises of a library established or maintained pursuant to Washington law. The premises of a zoo or aquarium accredited or certified by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums or the Zoological Association of America, or a facility with a current signed memorandum of participation with an association of zoos and aquariums, species survival plan, or the premises of a transit station or transit facility, including all passenger facilities, structures, stops, shelters, bus zones, and other properties that are owned, leased, held, or used by transit authority for the purposes of providing public transportation services, which means if you're standing on the street by a bus shelter, you're violating this law. So you could be walking up the street past a bus zone, get assaulted or attacked by some freak that's camped out at a bus shelter, which happens frequently, and you would be violating this law. Exceptions. The foregoing restrictions on weapons in libraries, zoos, aquariums, transit stations, and facilities do not apply to any person licensed to carry a concealed firearm pursuant to Washington law. It's the only saving grace of this additional restriction is if you have a concealed weapons permit, this doesn't matter. But they're still violating your right to carry a firearm. You shouldn't have to get a concealed weapons permit. Law enforcement personnel, security personnel while engaged in official duties, correctional personnel or community corrections officers, as long as they are employed as such and have completed government-sponsored law enforcement firearms training. Any person engaged in military activities sponsored by the federal or state governments while engaged in official duties, or the activities of color guards and honor guards affiliated by the United States military, Washington National Guard, or Department of Veterans Affairs related to burial or interment ceremonies, including but not limited to any staging and logistical requirements of the color guard or honor guard. The restrictions on weapons in zoos and aquariums also do not apply to employees of the zoo, aquarium, or animal sanctuary while engaged in their employment if the weapon is owned by the zoo, aquarium, or animal sanctuary and maintained for the purpose of protecting its employees, animals, or the visiting public. Definitions. Transit authority means a city transit system, a county public transit authority, a metropolitan municipal corporation transit system, a public transportation benefit area, an unincorporated transportation benefit area, a regional transit authority, or any special purpose district formed to operate a public transportation system. Shall not be infringed. This one also making its way, I believe it's past the Senate now. It's going to the House, but it's Senate Bill 1695. The Secretary or the Secretary's designee, who must be a departmental employee, may issue a prescription or standing order for any biological product, device, or drug for purposes of controlling and preventing the spread of, mitigating, or treating any infectious or non-infectious disease or threat to the public. This is as in the Secretary of Health. The Secretary or the Secretary's designee may place limitations on the use of a prescription or standing order. Of course, prescription, we're talking about a vaccine here. And should include appropriate recommendations for follow-up care. To issue a prescription or standing order, the Secretary or the Secretary designee must hold a valid license in the state that authorizes the issuance of the prescription or standing order and comply with applicable licensing requirements not in conflict with this act. The Secretary or the Secretary's designee has sole discretion and owes no duty to any person to issue a prescription or standing order. Neither the state nor the Secretary nor the Secretary's designee shall be liable for any civil or criminal damages or any professional disciplinary action related to the issuance of prescriptions or standing orders. So when they tell you that you have to take this vaccine and it causes damage to you or death, they cannot be held liable, civil, criminal, or any disciplinary action. Isn't that handy? Other than for acts or omissions constituting gross negligence or willful or wanton misconduct. Before issuing a standing order, the Secretary or the designee shall solicit and consider the recommendations of the local health officers for the geographic areas to which the standing order will apply, unless doing so would result in a delay that would endanger public health. The Secretary, the Secretary's designee, and the Department of Health employees may acquire, possess, deliver, dispense, and administer a biological product, device, or drug pursuant to a prescription or standing order, provided that the individual holds a valid license in a state that authorizes such activity as applicable. Other persons may acquire, possess, deliver, dispense, and administer a biological product, device, or drug pursuant to a prescription or standing order as otherwise provided by law. This act does not limit or modify the authority of a local health officer to issue a prescription or standing order under any other provision of law. Nothing in this section shall be construed to allow the Secretary or the Secretary's designee to issue a standing order to require a person to take a drug or biological product or withhold a drug or biological product from a person. Really. No standing order will require you to take it. Gee, haven't we already been through that? I know they like to say that they never forced anybody to do it, but under threat of losing your job and not being able to get unemployment benefits because you refused, that is forcing you to do something. Just because they didn't come out and say those words, it is forcing you to make a decision. Some people had to continue to work. That is forcing you to do something. And the last time I looked at this bill, which was Saturday, there were over 46 pages of people who had logged on to say they were against, well, the pages where it shows if they're against or for the bill. There were over 46 pages, and nearly every single person is against this bill. There was maybe 5 people in support of it, literally. So I'm wondering how it is that it's clear that the people do not want this bill to go into effect. So why are you ignoring the pages and pages and pages of your constituents who have signed in and said they don't want this, but you're going to go ahead with it anyway? These people are supposed to pass laws and do their jobs based on the will of the people, which we all know in this state, that has not gone on for some time. It's the will of the people of Seattle. The rest of us, though, we're shit out of luck. This one I hadn't noticed before, SB 2368. This will take the Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance, which I wasn't aware existed, and make it part of the DSHS. DSHS will coordinate statewide to support the economic and social immigration and basic needs of immigrants and refugees arriving and resettling in Washington. DSHS is to coordinate with local, state, and federal agencies and other stakeholders. DSHS will designate as the lead state agency responsible for the development, review, and administration of the Washington State Plan for Refugee Settlement. DSHS is to submit the state plan to and seek approval from the Federal Office of Refugee Settlement within the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. DSHS shall provide refugee cash assistance, refugee medical assistance, and refugee support services in accordance with the Federal Act and state plan. The refugee support services may include employment services, English language instruction, case management, and other services or assistance consistent with the Federal Act. DSHS may administer services to immigrants who are ineligible for federal services. DSHS may contract with external entities, including community-based organizations, to provide services. In contracting with community-based organizations, DSHS must engage communities impacted to determine an equitable funding distribution and contracting process. Immigrant means a person who has arrived in the United States and the state of Washington from another country, seeking residence who is not a naturalized citizen. Illegal. Refugee means a person admitted into the United States under Section 207 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, and others who are ineligible for federal refugee resettlement services under federal law. Well, first of all, DSHS can't even manage what it's in charge of right now, right? Their services are awful. They're understaffed, or their staff is incompetent. You know, people who are trying to get services from DSHS have to wait months and months and sometimes years. They're just like every other bureaucratic organization in the state. They don't operate effectively, efficiently. And now they're going to be in charge of these illegal aliens who don't really deserve any services. Why are you taking away services from state citizens to give to immigrants? Because in essence, that's what's going to happen here. You're taking away time and money that could be used on people who live here, Americans, and you're going to give it to these people who don't belong here, who shouldn't be here, who broke the law to get here. They're trying to pass laws to allow illegals to hold civil service positions, police, firefighters, corrections officers, park rangers. Not only will they be able to hold those positions, but they're going to get 15% added to their test scores when you go take a test against them to get a job. Because they're bilingual or they have some other quote-unquote experience that the state deems to be useful. They're trying to pass the law to let them hold professional licenses in this state. Bail bondsmen, money transfer agents, security officers, private investigators. Not just hold those jobs, but own the company. Do you know what kind of information you have access to as a private investigator? I mean, it's just like being a law enforcement officer in some aspects, as far as the information that you can gather on private citizens. Credit bureau information, banking information that the general populace is not able to access. But we're going to let the illegal aliens that we know nothing about, who come from who knows where and have done who knows what, and there's no way to really check their background. You know, citizens are required to pass fingerprint tests and all this other stuff. How are they going to pass a fingerprint check? They can't. All these double standards where these people who have come here illegally, broken federal law, so they've already committed either a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on how many times they've done it, which would disqualify them from all of these civil service positions or holding a professional license in this state. But the state's going to make exceptions for them. The state makes all these exceptions for them, but not for you. Not for the tax-paying citizens who are needing jobs, who pay these people's salaries and everything else. No, not for you. But for the people that came here illegally that have nothing, they get all the extra benefits. Why is that? Well, I told you about the Senate bill that's passed the Senate, that they're trying to make the LGBTQ community, transgenderism, all this, they're trying to tie it into ethnicity and make it a protected class. And they're trying to pass this law that will force schools to start teaching kids about it, and you won't be able to refuse it because they're a protected class, and that would be discrimination. Parents won't be able to opt out. Well, they're also trying to pass a House bill that mirrors it. It's HB 2331. A school district board of directors, school board, may not refuse to approve or prohibit the use of any textbook, instructional material, supplemental instructional material, or other curriculum for student instruction on the basis that it relates to or includes the study of the role and contributions of any individual or group that is part of a protected class, as established in public school non-discrimination provisions. Provisions barring certain inactions and prohibitions by school district boards of directors do not apply if the educational material content associated with the action or inaction violates non-discrimination requirements for public schools, including if the materials contain bias against any individual or group who is part of a protected class. Anyone alleging a violation of requirements barring the specified inactions and prohibitions may bring a complaint under provisions prohibiting discrimination in public school. Any school board found to be in violation of the requirements is considered to have violated public school non-discrimination provisions and is subject to the applicable actions. Blah, 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 blah. Word salad, right? But basically what it's saying is once they make LGBTQ, or maybe they already are, a protected class, then the schools can't refuse any instruction, textbook, supplemental instructional material, or other curriculum. And we've all seen what kind of weird pedo crap that some of these groups try to bring into the schools. I mean, especially like in, Seattle school, King County school districts. They're going to force this stuff down your kid's throat. And they're making it so there will be nothing you can do about it, barring taking your kids out of public school and homeschooling them. Which, that is probably the best thing, is to get them out of the public school system, unfortunately. Even if you homeschool your kids, they can still participate in sports at the school. They can still go to whatever classes at the school they want. They just don't have to be there for all of them. And that's what I would recommend you do. There are a lot of good online homeschool programs, a lot of good material that you can get to teach your own kids. And then they can still go to the school and get the social interaction for part of the day. Still participate in school sports and everything else, but they don't have to be there getting this garbage drilled into them for the whole day. I don't know what it's going to take to wake these school districts up, honestly. Well, in the state's never-ending desire to provide benefits to criminals and its incarcerated population, SB 5953 is all about federal and state financial aid for post-secondary education. DOC selects incarcerated individuals to participate in its post-secondary education program based on priority criteria determined by DOC. Priority should be given to incarcerated individuals who do not already possess a post-secondary education degree and have a reentry plan that includes participation in a post-secondary degree or certificate program that is offered at the individual's correctional facility. Approved by DOC is eligible and effective and limited to a post-secondary degree or certificate program. DOC must, to the extent possible and considering all available funds, prioritize its resources to meet the following goals for incarcerated individuals in the following order. 1. Achievement of a high school diploma or high school equivalency certificate. 2. Achievement of vocational skills necessary for work programs or to qualify for work upon release. And 3. Additional work and education programs necessary for compliance with an incarcerated individual's reentry plan, including special education services and post-secondary degree and certificate education programs, and 4, other appropriate vocational work or education programs that are not necessary for the cost of educational programming, including educational programs that are not necessary for compliance with an incarcerated individual's reentry plan. Again, other appropriate vocational work or education programs that are not necessary for compliance with an incarcerated individual's reentry plan, including post-secondary degree or certificate programs. If programming is provided for 1, 2, or 3, DOC pays for the cost of educational programming, including books, materials, and supplies. If programming is provided for Goal 4, the incarcerated individual is responsible for paying all or part of the costs, including books, fees, and tuition, based on a formula that correlates to the individual's average monthly income or available savings and a prorated portion or percent of the per-credit fee. A third party, including nonprofit entities or community-based post-secondary education programs, may pay for costs and tuition on the incarcerated individual's behalf. For programming provided to meet goals 1, 2, or 3 that is financial aid eligible, DOC may require the individual to apply for any federal and state financial aid grants available to the individual as a condition of participation in such programming. And it goes through if the person wants to self-pay or whatever, but then it comes down to if the costs of attendance exceed any financial aid grant award that may be available to the individual, or the person is not eligible for federal or state financial aid grants, DOC must pay the cost of attendance not covered by third-party funding. All regulations and requirements from the U.S. Department of Education for federal Pell Grants for prison education programs apply to financial aid eligible post-secondary programming. For programming provided to meet goals 1, 2, or 3 that is not financial aid eligible at the time the individual is enrolled or paid for by DOC or a third party, the DOC must pay the costs of such programming. Why? Why are we using our tax dollars to pay for these criminals to go to college, to get vocational training? Why? Do you honestly think they're going to use it? The majority of them are going to use it? Does it matter? They're in prison for a reason, not to get their post-secondary education paid for or their vocational training paid for. They already get all their medical bills paid for, all their dental, eye. They go to all kinds of doctor's appointments while they're in prison that the taxpayers get to pay for. Why? Surgeries and massage therapy and all this other garbage. They're not entitled to any of that stuff. You're in prison. You're supposed to be punished. Not having everything you need taken care of and paid for at the cost of victims and taxpayers. This state is all about coddling criminals. It views criminals as the victims and the rest of us as I don't know what. But every possible opportunity, chance, everything that they want to give these criminals come back out and hurt you. And while they're in prison, they get to waste our tax money that could be used for something else, that could be used for people that are hurting and need it. But no, that money's going to go to criminals. That money's going to go to illegals. Not you. We have to use our voices to put a stop to this stuff. Enough is enough. Thanks for listening to Left Coast News. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net. Please subscribe, like, and share to your social media. We appreciate your support.